Will I ever get used to this new theme? I don't think so. I'm obsessed. I'm in love. Hello, travelers, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, Indie Diary number 32, the second of the year. It's a pleasure to have you here sitting around the fire with me, and as usual, this is your loyal Indie Diarist and host, Anthony L. Wolf. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to shout out to my Patreons as usual, Fano Code, Zagini, Fishbump Dev, and Peleg. You guys are so amazing and you make this all worth doing. Thank you for your incredible support. If you too, listeners, want to support the show, go to patreon.com/theindiediarist and you will find a lot of tiers which give you a lot of exclusive content, including previews and uncut and all of that jazz. But this is a packed episode, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, a show on the human stories behind indie game development. Today with me is a very special guest. It's Alex from Polygon Treehouse. So, Alex, we met at EGX. I played your game, Mythwrecked, and I had such a blast. And also, I love the nice little concept behind it. So, I'll just hand it over to you and ask you, what do you do, where are you based, and what you're working on right now?
Sure, well, thanks for having me on. Yes, my name's Alex, and I'm the creative director and lead developer at a really small indie studio called Polygon Treehouse, and we make art-led narrative games. And our new game, the one we're working on at the moment, is called Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island. And basically, you play as Alex, who's a British backpacker, not me, another Alex, and she's taking a much-needed break from modern life, traveling across Europe, and caught in a mysterious storm and shipwrecked on this idyllic Greek island. Fortunately, she's got to try and find a way home. But fortunately, it's home to a family of oddballs who happen to be the long-lost Greek gods, but they've all lost their memories. So you, as the player, have to befriend them, try and work out what's going on, re-establish their memories, helping them recover their identities, and get to the bottom of the mystery and find a way home. So that's it in a nutshell. And our games are 3D exploration, but very kind of narrative heavy. We're really passionate about telling stories in games and also about non-violent games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a really good point, because I remember there was absolutely no violence in Mythwrecked. I mean, it was all exploration, all doing those quests, all finding the right people to speak to, and just sorting out the Greek gods as and just giving them a little bit of peace of mind. But yeah, the concept itself was really interesting. But as an icebreaker, I like to ask this question to pretty much every guest that comes on the show, which is, if you could be any game's character for a day, who would you be and why?
Oh, that is really difficult. There's one that definitely springs to mind because I'm looking at all the Monkey Island artwork that's this side of my desk. And I think growing up, I think games have a real power to transport people to the places. And I remember first seeing Monkey Island, and that was one that really went like, oh wow, this is like telling an actual story. It was not just like a character jumping over things. And there was always something so nice about all those islands. I remember like Fat Island with PH in Monkey Island 2. I just wanted to live there. It looked so nice. It was like sun drenched, all these like really rich verdant forests everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be, and also like it'd be great to be Guybrush because he's a bit rubbish at everything. and so like Elaine's always going to be there to kind of catch him when he falls. So I think I would probably go for him. That's the one that immediately sprang to my mind anyway.
Nice. Yeah, well, nobody ever said Guybrush, so that's a very good choice. And I love Guybrush. I mean, he's so relatable, and you cannot not relate with him.
Yeah.
So it's great. And also, as you say, he fails at pretty much everything, but that's what makes him great. Yeah. But I think you would be failing at pretty much everything, because Mythwrecked is coming out really great. But let's now take a step back. And I like to always start from the beginning on these things, which is my next question would be my next request, I would say, would be to think back to your childhood. What's your earliest or fondest gaming-related memory that you remember?
So my earliest one that is a very fond memory is I remember, because I am quite an old man. So I was born in 1980, and our first playing games of any kind was on an Acorn Electron, which was kind of like the same era as like BBC Micro. And my dad worked at the university, and he yeah, I don't know if he borrowed one from the university, but we play these text adventures, and then there was one called Sphinx or Riddle of the Sphinx, and he'd bring back, and so it's just text adventures, no graphics. You could like go north, go east, that kind of thing. But I remember just really enchanted, and I remember he brought back dot matrix printer paper, which if you don't know, so printer paper used to have these kind of these perforated edges with holes that would basically clip in, and he'd be able to steal some of it from the university. He's retired a long time ago, so I don't think they're going to come after him.
Okay.
But we'd make maps. Me and my dad together, we'd make maps on these, to try and keep track of where we were going in the text adventure. So I think that will always be like a really special memory for me of playing those games with my dad and my brother as well.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I remember playing games with my uncle. He's the one who introduced me to video games, and I haven't stopped ever since. And he used to play on PC a lot of games, Max Payne and all of those, but also Final Fantasy VII on PS1. It's one of the first games that I saw him play. Metal Gear Solid as well, which for a kid was not really the best one to see. But I ended up loving the saga. I ended up loving every single Metal Gear Solid that came out, 5 included, despite all the issues. But yeah, it's just so great when you start gaming because you connect with someone. I think I can really relate to that. So that's great. And of course, treasure maps, not maps, sorry, maps for those text adventures and such. But which games do you remember playing? Which video games do you remember playing growing up? And do you think they're having some sort of influence on your work?
Yeah, so definitely. I think it was a lot of those early like LucasArts adventure games that really had a real impact again in the power to tell story, and also art animation. My background is in art animation. I tend to like wear lots of hats as like the working at a small indie studio, but there was definitely something about those games. It was like you could be anything, and you could tell quite a nuanced story. It could be fun, it could be scary, it could be fun and scary, and that was the real kind of like, oh, this is like I'm in the story, and that for me was a really really magical thing, and just to see all the different types of games you used to make. I think as I got a bit older, and that was probably on the Amiga, and as I got a bit older, I started getting into PlayStation and Super Nintendo, where I think some of those games weren't as prevalent, I guess. But then even on PlayStation, the original Resident Evil had a real, even though it is a kind of a violent game around shooting things, actually there's a really incredible sense of place. I think that's another thing we try and bring into our games, is this like thing of like being somewhere and transporting some the player somewhere. So yeah, I think those kind of real mood experiences, the ones that have really captivated me. There'll be times that I'll enjoy playing Mario, or something that you could say maybe is a kind of really well crafted but slightly shallower experience, or something that doesn't grab you emotionally. But I think I'll always get drawn back to those types of games. I think one of the as I got a bit older, you get interested in different things, and maybe you move away from playing quite as much games. But I remember going to it was university or leaving university and playing Ico, and that was one that really brought me back.
Oh my god, Ico, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can.
Beautiful.
I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There's some around here somewhere, but there's the shrine in the background. But there was something about Ico that was like about telling a story in the game, but without any words. And I think
it was just beautiful. I played it at least twice, 3 times, but Shadow of the Colossus I played more because it was a bit more action, and I liked the soundtrack a lot, and the just journey on Agro to just go and find the next Colossus. But Ico is just so beautiful, just so beautiful. And I like what you said about the sense of place, because those games do it too. Like they really catapult you into a world that is completely like ethereal, or even dreamlike in some ways. And I think in Mythwreck, I can see that, because you can, even from the demo that I played at EGX, I did feel like that was a world in itself, and it was very, very well built. So world building is, of course, important in games like that. And I think you guys did an excellent job there. You can really feel like you're on that island with those gods, that they have their own culture, their own systems and such. So that is definitely something that comes through.
Awesome. Yeah, I think sense of place is a really interesting one. I think the thing that interests me about it the most, and the same with storytelling to a certain thing, is it's about not any one discipline. So it's not just about art. It's not just about music. It's about a layering up of everything, And I think that's the where the magic really comes in. We talk when we give talks and stuff. We talk quite a lot about holistic storytelling and trying to, because obviously a game is not a book, a game is not a movie. Trying to utilize all the interactivity of games to layer up everything, so we're not just relying on writing. We're relying on the music, we're relying on the graphics, we're relying on animation. I think when you get all those different elements, even like just getting involved, it just starts to elevate everything. I think it's a sense of cohesion. I think.
Yeah, totally agree. And at this point, I guess the next question is kind of obvious. When did you realize you wanted to make games? Like, was there some sort of aha moment, something like that?
So I think there was an early moment when I was playing it's a game called Repton on the BBC, the Acorn Electron. It came with a level editor, so you could start you basically replace their sprites with your own sprites. And Repton was kind of like a Boulder Dash kind of clone, I guess. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a big craze at the time. So basically, me and my friend Andrew, we basically used this really clunky level editor to basically reskin Repton as Ninja Turtles, so you'd be going around the Technodrome, and it was and he looked like it to us, but we were like, wow, this is cool. We were making a game, and then I was first aware of the power of it. But I was always interested in comics and storytelling in that way. But I think it was only when I finally went to study computer animation at university, and I think I did art. They have this thing in the UK called Art Foundation, where you'll spend a year just doing all kinds of art while you work out what particularly you want to go and specialise for your degree. And I decided to go and do computer animation because it felt like because people were talking about comic books, they were saying you can't really make any money from comic books, or it's very difficult to get a job. And so computer animation felt like it's this new thing that it felt like there was lots of work going in movies and in games. And I think once we got to university and we started playing around with stuff, I got more and more interested in the game side of things, mainly because film stuff, as you learn about stuff as you're going, the film stuff tends to be like, hey, here's Batman's cape, why don't you animate this 3-second shot of Batman's cape for a year? I was like, no thanks.
Not the most enthralling thing to do.
So it's for me, I was like, okay, actually, one of our final year projects, we actually had people from Sony Cambridge came into the university to set the final year project, which was to design and model and rig and animate a PlayStation 2 spec character. And so I took that project on in my final year. I made like a voodoo character, and really enjoyed doing it. And I got basically offered me a junior position off the back of that. So that's how I then started working at PlayStation in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, that's quite a story. That's quite a journey too. And I can really relate with what you said about the level editor. I connected with that one right away because although I'm not a game developer necessarily yet. I did play, I do it as a hobby. I just code and do things, and I still find it fun. But I remember I realized I wanted to make games around the same time when a lot of indies came out that were super narrative, and they had a lot of great story. As a narrative designer and a writer and content manager, all of those things, I just relate with good stories in general. But I also remember the beautiful feeling of building levels in Little Big Planet 1 and 2. And those editors were just mind-blowing to me, because until then, I had no idea about... I had no idea of all the logic, all the little things that go into a game and such. I had never programmed before. Now, of course, I've done it for a few years just as a hobby, but it was such a mind-blowing moment to me. Something just incredible that you could create levels that way, and you could just create your own game logic and make your own little games inside those games. That it made me realize that games really are something incredible that takes a lot of effort and puts together a lot of different disciplines in a very incredible way. So yeah, I can really see why you enjoyed playing around with level editors and that little acorn. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something really magical for me when people say what's the thing you enjoy? Is there a part about making games that you enjoy the most? And and for me, there is a specific there's kind of like a specific moment that will happen sometimes where things come to life, and it can be like you've got one thing, okay, this, and suddenly you add another thing in, then suddenly you're going like, oh, this is now it's come to life, and I think there's you're taking static polygons or textures or audio files or writing, and suddenly there's a moment where things just go, I'm alive, and it's just like the most magical thing in the world. And I think that's why it's really great it's so amazing games like Little Big Planet where people can play around with them, create things. The kind of barriers to entry are much lower than like having to make your own game engine. I think that's one of the things I find exciting about, since we went indie, of all the engines that are available off the shelf that you can try and make games in. It's really it really opens things up. And I can code, but I'm not I wouldn't call myself like a programmer, but I just like, okay, let's try this, and then suddenly things work, and it's just it's definitely, there is magic in making games.
You find it fun to tinker. Yeah, I can relate with that one. I agree. I mean, you're not the first person who said this to me, that moment when things start coming together, from being just an idea on paper and then you can actually see it on screen, that moment is very magical and happens with every game. And at that point, that's when you realize, oh yeah, we do have our game now. Now we just have to build the other parts. So yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful moment for many people. Well, until now, with your experience making games so far, has there been like a particular development challenge that left a mark on you? Anything big learnings that you want to share with other devs?
So I think one of I guess it's not really related to kind of like narrative stuff. So there's probably been a few. So when I started working at Sony, that was PlayStation 2 time, and that was just such a magical time because basically you were there was loads of people who were much more experienced, so you were just like absorbing, asking questions, and just like they were really helping you level you up as an artist, an animator, and a creator. But I think the last game I made at Sony was a PSVR launch title, and that was like, I think that was the one where I was like, oh, this is really different. There's like a lot of stuff to consider, and it was just like when the later parts, when I was working at Sony, it was for Sony Cambridge became Gorilla Cambridge, who worked on the Killzone games. This was like making a kind of sports arena shooter, but there was so much to do in terms of like, UI. How do you know someone's going to be able to see the UI in, are they going to be looking at it? How do you, all the stuff you have to do to try and make sure the player can orient themselves and still feel comfortable while playing quite a high-speed kinetic game. So that was definitely like a huge challenge, and everyone kind of really knocked out of the park with that game, and because there was just so much research and testing to try and make sure that we could really push the experience. So that was definitely a huge challenge. On a kind of different note, I think our debut indie game, Brurky, which is inspired by Scandinavian folklore, for us that was after working in a big studio for a long time to then suddenly go, now we can do whatever we want, and that's like quite a scary thing. And I think we knew
can also be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think one of the things we did with that, which I think has worked well for us, is just going we want to make sure that our kind of studio makes games that have the a clearly visible like DNA in them. So we make art-led narrative games. They're non-violent, and I think in some ways, like saying like, okay, we're this, we're that, and sometimes because there's so many different games you can make, to be able to go like racing games, no thanks. Fighting games, no thanks, and suddenly you start getting narrower and narrower, and that's just just like really helps. And so when we started the company, we knew we wanted to do a modern take on a classic adventure game do one in 3D. So that was very much like starting off with. There's still so many. You could do so many different games with that, but it's still much narrower than everything. So I think that's I think trying to hone in on like what games you want to make, having a bit of self-reflection, and go like, why do we want to make non-violent games? Why why do we want to tell stories in games, and asking those questions? Can you go, okay, you kind of find out your own motivations. And I think the non-violent one's a really interesting one. I think me and Tom, who I founded the company with, we've both been getting a bit older. He'd had a kid, and obviously, it's even worse now when you look at what's going on in the world in terms of wars and violence and politics. And so I think we just wanted to put something. We've been making a lot of shooting games, and we just wanted to which we enjoyed the craft of making them, but we kind of go, right, this is our own thing now. Like we want to put some positivity, some good vibes out into the world. Yeah,
that's really commendable. I mean, it's with everything going on in the world, just trying to do some non-violent games and knowing, like, being your core value to do non-violent story-led games. That is already something really remarkable, I think. So it's great that you went that way. And about going that way, actually, you mentioned when you founded the studio. What exactly is the story behind Polygon Treehouse? How did it come to be?
So as alluded to, I worked at PlayStation, I'm guessing, for about 15 years. So I started in 2002. Yeah, so about 15 years. And basically, sadly, we had a great time there, but the studio shut down. So, so after the game launched, the kind of studio got shut down. But actually, I'd been there for like a long time. I'd got a lot of experience, and I was already interested in making indie games and playing around with stuff. So I was like, okay, this is, one door closes, another door opens, and whilst it was quite sad, a great bunch of people there. I was also quite excited about what the future may bring. And so me and the other art director from the studio, Tom, we founded Polygon Treehouse. He was also intrigued about what would it be like going into doing our own thing rather than going into a AAA studio. I think both of us, it's kind of scary because I had interviews to go and work as art director at other big studios around Cambridge and elsewhere, and I think as we were both probably getting towards 40 and we'd been in the studio for 15 years, and you go, like, well, if I go into another studio and I stay there for another 15 years, I'm like 55. And so I think there was a thing of like going, well, if we don't try it now, then we're never going to try it. And I think that just didn't really sit well with either of us, the idea of not knowing whether we could do this or not. So it's kind of like scary. I think, as they would say in Britain, they'd say squeaky bum time. And but yeah, and it's been really hard work. Had lots of ups and downs. But our debut game came out and it got nominated for 2 BAFTAs. You can see didn't win, but I still got the certificates.
Still got the nomination though. Yeah. That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's lots of and loads of people played the game, and now we're on to like game number 2. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world, and I feel very privileged to be able to make games and enjoy doing it. It is challenging. Like, it sometimes doesn't feel like people say, oh, it must be so much fun making video games. It's like, well, yeah, it's kind of like, it can be sometimes.
It is, but it can also be something else.
Yeah. So, but I think that's the kind of like, that challenge is a really it's a really rewarding one. I think even when things are tough, making games is still really rewarding.
Yeah. And about making games, moving on to your current project, which is Mythwrecked. What exactly inspired the development of Mythwrecked? Why did you decide that you wanted to do a story in a about an explorer stranded on an island full with Greek gods?
So we finished off Rurki, which was inspired by Scandinavian folklore, and so but that was kind of like an interesting take on Scandinavian folklore. We basically looked at it wasn't really the gods; it was more the creepy creatures from the lakes and the mountains and that kind of stuff. And it was more looking at them rather than the scary. Well, yeah, they are scary monsters, but looking at like what is the human aspect to them. So rather than being like, oh, it's a monster, I want to kill it, it's like, oh, it's a monster, how do I work out what's going on with them and help them, and then befriend them? And then so we already had a bit of history of looking at mythology and folklore in a modern lens. So that's that. So when we'd finished Rurki, COVID lockdowns had happened, and so we'd finished the game off in all that, which was strangely that because my lifestyle didn't really change throughout that entire thing. So I was working from home anyway, and so I started to question my life choices because it's like this huge global event happening.
I think a lot of people did around that time, yeah.
Yeah, and it's huge things happening. We were just carrying on, but I think as I was coming up with the idea for the next game, we started to think about COVID and the lockdowns and not being able to see your friends and your family, not being able to say goodbye to loved ones, not being able to travel and go on holidays or visit new places. And so I started thinking about a game where you could travel, you could make some new friends, albeit slightly strange ones, and gradually the idea of Mythwrecked revealed itself. And we just really like the idea of looking at gods and mythology and what it means, what it could mean to today's world, and essentially a time of great peril. It's like it was a kind of scary time, but wanting to. We think with Rurky, the game ended up being quite sad and poignant in some ways, and quite emotionally hard hitting. And I think we kind of worked really hard on the story to make sure that it wasn't just a paper thin story. There was some substance there. So it wasn't just about monsters, about Tuve and her family. And with Mythwreck, we wanted to because there was so much sad stuff going on everywhere, trying to make the game that feel quite joyous, still has moments of peril and mystery.
It does feel uplifting, yeah.
Awesome.
Just from the demo, so
yeah, and just like meeting people and connecting with them and like saying hello. I think there's something really it's really powerful there. And so yeah, just like that, got fascinated with the idea of a friend them up and like rather than like shooting people, you're kind of actually making friends with them, working out, helping them out. And so that was something that really fascinated. And then I think there was a moment where originally it didn't have the Greek gods in it. There was a slightly different setting, and I think and basically as soon as I went like, oh, actually maybe what about that? And what about if they're people not just recovering their lost memories? What happens if their lost memories are the Greek gods? At that point, I just wet myself with excitement because I was, and I think there's a moment where when you know, and I was like, that feels really exciting to me. And I think you've got to make what feels exciting to you, and hope that other people will kind of share in that excitement. And I think if you're excited about it, generally that will come across. So.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah. And now that the development of Mythwrecked is near its end, I believe you mentioned when the game is due to come out, if it's not out already.
Yes, it's out later in the summer. So yeah, I think it's gonna. I think we've got it down as like Q3 this year. So yeah, a little ways,
there you go.
But still lots of work to do. But getting there.
So now that you're nearing the end in a way, because of course there will be patches afterwards and such, but nearing the end of development. If you could go back, is there anything you would change about your work on Mythwrecked?
Not really. I think we kind of done we kind of like some of the kind of, I wouldn't say mistakes we've made, but we kind of had some key learnings from Rurky that we took into Mythwrecked, and that's always nice making games in the future. I think there's always stuff you go. I think with Mythwrecked we kind of moved away from the point and click formula, so it's a very different thing. I think maybe I kind of would have so the gameplay is less about dragging items down from inventory. It's more about exploring the island and using this radar you have to almost like metal detect where these lost objects are, and then working out who they belong to. And I think I maybe maybe a bit naively didn't anticipate the kind of like essentially creating a whole new kind of gameplay style of like this. What is this non-violent gameplay? Just how much stuff might be involved with that, because the point and click stuff and like how it generally works is really like tried and tested. A lot of people like understand it, but I think we just felt that when you say like point and click, even if it's like a 3D modern point and click, sometimes people just get a little bit turned off, or they think it's old-fashioned. So we were kind of interested in like a short hike and
beautiful,
and just like how just exploring a space and maybe having some more mechanics are more accessible. And I think there's also a thing with like balancing point and click puzzles that's just really, really hard, because like some people will just get it, so it can't be like too easy. But some people really struggle, so it can't be too hard. And so balancing puzzles that everyone can have like an enjoyable experience is like massively tough. So Mythwreck's more we call it like a story sandbox. So it's still like elements of challenge there, but we kind of want to basically whisk you away, whiz you through this magical adventure with mystery, like gods and intrigue, and have you just really have like almost like a frictionless experience, right? Just like really enjoy being there. But yeah, it has been like getting that right has been probably naively more challenging than I thought it would be. Yeah.
Well, but you're getting there, and I love that you mentioned a lot of things about the game being uplifting and you guys wanting it to be uplifting, filled with positivity. And I guess I've been moving or building around this question for the entire chat. And it's something that I love to ask everybody because it's my favorite question of the set. I think we are at the core. So please tell me, Alex, why are you a game developer? What drives you forward?
Oh, I think it's creating worlds and telling stories. That is at the the core. And I think even before I was making games, that's what I was like drawing comics on the kitchen table as a kid or pictures. It was always about telling stories and taking the reader or the player somewhere else. I think that's what really drives me, and just the different types of stories you can tell in games. I think that's what I find really exciting. I think like sometimes it's kind of like going, I kind of sometimes think like, oh, maybe like 'cause sometimes people have jobs that they kind of go, oh, this is my job, and I'm kind of like not so emotionally entangled with my job, and it's like it's my job. I go and do my job, and then I come home, and then I live. And I think like there's definitely something there where like, I'm really kind of, I wouldn't say consumed by game development, but it's like it's such a passion. When I see a film, we talked about going to see Ghibli films, and like when you go and see it, you go, oh, that's really interesting. I think everything you're kind of putting away in your little developer brain and thinking like, oh, how does this all work? And so I think it's a really exciting thing. And even like when obviously it's really, we moved to Scotland a few years ago, and it's part of that was to get to the mountains, and I think it's so it's really important to have like a balanced life. Even when you're going to go and walk around the mountains, I think that time away, your brain's always firing about what about this, what about that. So, but I think it's just at the core. I want to. I'm really passionate about about telling weird stories that are almost like modern Saturday morning cartoons, and just really whisking people away. And it's just like and honing my craft myself. I think it's definitely the thing, like you're always learning, and that's a really nice thing about game development. You're always learning, and especially as you get a bit older, it's so nice to be able to carry on learning about stuff, and keep on like broadening your skill set. And I just really relish that challenge every day.
That's a great answer. I think it's beautiful that you have that drive and that passion. I think it really comes through. So yeah, that's amazing. So I've got only a couple more questions for you, and then we'll wrap up. But the next one could be a bit deep as well. Imagine now writing a letter to yourself, but at the time you left PlayStation.
Right.
What would you say?
Say it's going to be okay. I think, at that time, I think that probably would be a thing. Is like I think when Rookie launched, we really had, because you're very close to something as you're making it, and sometimes you can't really see it. And when Rookie came out and the reviews it was getting, especially us, we had experience making games but not really telling stories in games, and we were a bit nervous about that, how it might be perceived. We're not what you call like traditional writers, and so when that game came out and like got so many plaudits for story, and that was like a real like a weight had been lifted. I was so worried about that stuff. I think like if there was anything, I'd go back and go like, if I'd go back and go, you're gonna win awards for storytelling, and you're gonna be nominated for 2 BAFTAs, you're gonna be nominated for the Game Awards. That'd be like, open that letter and be like, "Hey," and it'd be, and I think it probably would take a little bit of the pressure off, because I think there's probably a lot of creators. The kind of most pressure you probably get is the pressure you put on yourselves. You want something to be really good. So, I think that would probably be it. And also maybe to like, I think it's always nice because you have that weight lifted. You probably enjoy things things more as well. And I've enjoyed the journey on everything. But that would be. I think I would be shocked if I'd found out I'd moved to Scotland as well. I think that would be really.
Of course.
But definitely. It's definitely made a lot of sense. We love here. Like the mountains is like one thing. So we were in Cambridge before. It was notoriously flat. And it's lots of kind of like fenland. So just being in the mountains, and there's like such a really warm community of developers in Dundee. It's famous for game development with like Grand Theft Auto was started here. Lemmings. You can see there's little
Dundee. Wait, the first episode of the year, which came out to you would be this week on Monday. The development studio is also from Dundee. They're Hyperluminal Games. Don't know if you've heard about them.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I was at Scottish Games Week, and they were just a few tables down from us. But it's a really, really lovely place, and there's always talks going on. Lots of different people going out organising socials. So Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice. But I think to sum up, I'd send a letter back to myself saying you've made the right choice.
Perfect. Yeah. And yeah, and also as you said, having a balanced lifestyle there in the mountains, it helped you out. So that's interesting though. You would rather know how things are going to go than just a simple it's going to be okay. Like, would you like to tell your former self that you're going to win 2 BAFTAs?
Well, nominated.
And such? Sorry, nominated. You're going to be nominated for 2 BAFTAs.
Yeah, I'm guessing that. I mean, there's a danger with that, isn't there? Because if I'm guessing in a Back to the Future kind of way, if you implanted that knowledge, you might go, well, I don't need to try then. I'm just going to sit around all day. So yeah, I think that's a difficult one. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Just like saying I think going back to that point and going, yeah, that was the right decision.
It was the right choice.
Yeah, and it's definitely it's definitely a scary decision to make. But no, I'm really pleased that that's the one we went for.
Yeah. And lastly, a little bit of a fun question to wrap things up. If you had unlimited budget and time, what game would you create?
Ooh. So yeah, because actually one of the things I like about making games is making games with small teams. Especially like directing a game, because I like the fact that
you're not the first one who says that.
Because I've worked at big studios. I worked on Killzone 2, which had hundreds of people, and I think there's something really nice about making games with a small group of people because you can see everyone's fingerprints on the game. Everyone you can see. Nice. You can see that you can see this is some personality from the writer. This is some personality from the narrative designer. There's just a bit of everyone there, and also just less people to organize. So I'd definitely still like to make small games, and I think one of the things that have been with Mythrax is slightly shorter play duration than Rookie. Rookie was maybe 10-15 hours, which we definitely did not intend to make it that long. But and Mythrax coming in a bit shorter, and I think play duration is something I've been interested in. What kind of play duration I like, and I think yeah, I'm kind of about that 6 to 10 hours is my kind of sweet spot. And so I'd still want to make a game with a small team. I'd still want to make a game that had a short duration. So I'm not entirely sure that much would change, to be honest. Yeah, so I mean, you probably spend a load of money on marketing, I guess, or
you would still make the same games, but spend a lot of money on marketing, so you could give it the chance it deserves. Yeah,
for me, the enjoyment of doing indie stuff is I am creating again, rather than directing a team of artists, which still has the pleasure and enjoyment in it. It's I'm rolling up my sleeves, I'm modeling characters, I'm animating characters, I'm doing the UI, we're editing the scripts. I think if I was had loads of money and I was a step back from that, I would not enjoy it as much. So
yeah.
So yeah,
point.
It's a difficult one to answer, but I don't think I'd change that much.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people say that, and when they do, I always think they're on the right path. So that's a good question to that's a good answer to give, definitely. So, well, Alex, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I think it's time for some parting words. Where can other people find you? And if they do, what is the best way to support you?
Oh, wow. So, yeah, you can find me on Twitter, which I'll still call it Twitter. I'm Kanara.
Oh, me too, yeah.
I'm Kanaratron, and the studio handle is at Polygon Treehouse. And you can follow our progress. If you're interested in art-led narrative games, check us out. You can also check out www.polygon-treehouse.com. And if you really want to, you're excited about our work, then please go and check out Mythrax on Steam and drop it a follow and a wish list. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. Wish us Mythrax on Steam because it's going to be awesome. And of course, I'm going to put all of these links in the description so that people can find you. All right, well. Thank you so much, Alex. It's been amazing having you on the show, and wishing you the best of luck with Mythrax, which is definitely approaching release, and I'm sure it's going to be great.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun to chat.
And here we are, folks. That's another episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And of course, thank you to Alex as well, who's been such an amazing guest to have on the show. I wish you all the best, and I truly can't wait for Mythwrecked to come out. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it very much. So please go to Steam and wishlist to Mythwrecked. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show or tell your friends. You can find the show right now on any major podcasting platform, like from YouTube to Spotify. And YouTube is a new one from the podcast anniversary earlier this month. So I'm going to post a lot of video content over there over the next few months and hopefully years as well. And yeah, I hope that you'll be there for the ride. But other than that, if you want to support the show in any way, please go to theindiediarist.com to find links to my social channels and also to Patreon and Ko-fi in case you want to support what I'm doing monetarily and show me your support in some different ways. You can also join the Discord channel by going to the same link, theindiediarist.com, and clicking on the Discord invite link. And I hope to see you there. If you are an indie game developer yourself, of course, please get in touch. It might be a while before I can get an episode out for you, but I'm sure I will be able to find a spot. So yes, please let me know, because I'm always looking for new stories to tell from the indie game development community. I'll speak to you next time.